Hello everyone, Alfred Mohani here, back at you with another presentation to help you learn English. In this one, we are looking at the semicolon. Let's get right into it. So, the semicolon. What is a semicolon used for? Essentially, the main thing you want to know is that a semicolon is used to join two independent clauses. And if we break down what independent means, is that the clauses must work on their own independently. So essentially, if you break down the semicolon sentence into the two clauses the semicolon is separating, and they don't make sense, it does not work. These two clauses need to work on their own. And it's one thing that you need to also know is that a semicolon is usually a tricky kind of decoy with the colon, where people kind of mistake what they are just because it looks familiar. But the main thing you need to recognize is that the semicolon has a colon, and a colon does not. Sorry, a semicolon has a comma, but a colon does not have a comma. So an example of when a semicolon is appropriate. So let's read number one. The wind blew my scarf into my face. Semicolon. We move to the next clause. The winter trees greeted me with happiness and a strange warmth. Nothing felt familiar when spring came around and bloomed. The trees stood high, with the sunlight kissing the leaves. I wandered around the park looking for a scene to film. All aisles of the park seemed crowded and littered with the fallen autumn leaves. So if we're breaking these down, we can realize that they all make sense, because if you took the semicolon and essentially put a dot, and it still works, because all these two clauses in each sentence work on their own. Now we're going to look at when a semicolon is not appropriate, and this will make more sense now that we break it down. The first one, I wandered to the mall to pick up some groceries my mom wanted me to buy, semicolon, some milk, almond, and a new purse. There was only a few things we could do at the park whilst we waited for the teachers to leave the residence, semicolon, like playing basketball or strolling around for an ice cream. I didn't know what else to do, semicolon, since my parents wouldn't let me go outside of the house. Now, when you break down these clauses, they do not work independently. For example, in the first sentence, some milk, almonds, and a new purse is not a sentence you can put together and have it work on its own. For the second one, if you just broke down the sentence and into the clauses and read them to see if they work independently, they do not. Like playing basketball or strolling around for an ice cream doesn't work independently. So this is not a semicolon sentence that works. And also the third one, I didn't know what else to do. And then since my parents wouldn't let me go outside the house. These two sentences do not work independently. That's why it does not work. So the biggest tip to remember here is that if two sentences do not work on their own, it is not a semicolon sentence. If you're dealing with a question that asks you which punctuation fits the sentence appropriately, and you recognize that in where the divider or the punctuation should be, the two clauses aren't independent, do not put a semicolon. Only put a semicolon if it works. Semicolon is a very, you could say, narrowed and specific punctuation, and don't be deceived by it. Sometimes, you think that these two sentences fit because they're long, or each clause just has a lot of words, but you have to read it when you're in the exam or when you're learning these questions and you're reading these sentences. You want to know that the two clauses that make up a sentence, or even more clauses, you need to recognize that they all work independently on their own. Because if they don't, it is not a semicolon sentence. Do not use a semicolon. Essentially, that is it for the semicolon presentation.